Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I call to order the zoning committee meeting for June 11th, 2018. Let me say before we get started, this meeting is not on the Sheets proposal or anything to do with the Sheets other than to give notice that the Sheets proposal matter will be discussed here at 7:30 p.m. on Monday, June 25th, 2018 at a public hearing. So if you're here for solely for Sheets, we're not going to be discussing that other than I'll read the notification of the hearing. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1475. An ordinance to consider a zoning code amendment from CVest Healthcare Properties LLC to allow a small format hospital as a permitted use within McKnight Road D Development Zoning District and the Institutional I Zoning Districts. The public is welcome to comment on the proposed ordinance. Comments are to be directed to the chair and limited to 5 minutes. But please let me say before we get started to keep your comments focused on the amendments themselves, such as allowing a small format hospital in a D development zoning district, changing the allowable height from 60 feet to 65 feet for a small format hospital, and the allowance of multi-use parking. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes, and as you reach the podium, please provide your name and address. Before I ask anyone to make comments, I'll ask Bruce Brady, the zoning officer for McCandless, to make some preliminary comments.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and appreciate it. Thank you, Councilmember Wakauskas. I appreciate the introduction. As Councilmember Wakauskas stated, this is an ordinance which was a text amendment to permit small format hospitals in the town of McCandless. The ordinance was introduced to us by CVest and their representatives. This is only, as council member, just to reinforce what the council member just stated, this is only about the ordinance itself. It is not about a site plan or a land development. If this goes forward, then there will be a land development submitted to us. So a couple of administrative items. This was published in the newspaper in accordance with the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, and it was also sent to Allegheny County in accordance with the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. We did receive a comment letter from Allegheny County. It was mostly saying that they did not have any concerns or issues with this. They did have two comments about why we have a difference in the D development district regulations and the I institutional regulations for this. And for those of you who have been through our D development regulations, I think you all probably already know the answer to that question. The D development is one of the most complicated ordinances you may ever see in your entire life. And I know that everybody that's been dealing with that since we started this understands that. So this ordinance is to permit small format hospitals, and it will be in our D development district and I institutional district. I institutional already includes hospitals in the I institutional district, so it just fits there, and maybe it doesn't even, we probably don't even need to add it in there, but for safety's sake, we put it in there also in case anybody ever questioned it. The D development district is our performance zoning district. And it extends basically from Vincentian Nursing on the west side of McKnight Road, the whole way to the base of McKnight Road as it starts up into Wexford Pine Creek Hill. On the east side, it starts just past McCandless Corporate Center and heads north to the same location across from Pine Creek Plaza. So that's where it is permitted. The ordinance permits buildings of a small format hospital to be 40,000 square feet in footprint size. Now, the building itself can be much more than that, but the footprint is limited to 40,000 square feet. And this is all in the definition of a small format hospital. It offers no more than 15 emergency beds and 15 overnight stay beds, inpatient beds. And it will be for 24-hour care. It regularly makes available clinical laboratory services and other hospital-related services. And I won't get into all those details. The other part of this is, right now, our zoning ordinance in D development limits building height to 60 feet. Because the hospital has special requirements, all hospitals have special requirements for, mostly for putting things above the drop ceilings that they have there. There's a lot of medical gases, communication, wiring, air ducts, purification devices. The ceiling height, or the floor-to-floor height, extends typically, which is 10 to 12 feet in these types of buildings, extends now up to between 15 and 16 feet. So we raised the, we're suggesting that the building height, maximum building height, be raised to 65 feet. The ordinance also clarifies what building height is, and CVEST thought it was important that they clarify that. We always thought the ordinance was pretty clear that it is from the ground up to the what we call the parapet, the bottom of the parapet, where the roof intersects with the parapet, and excludes things like what we call the penthouse for the elevator, the top of the elevator. That's excluded from building height. We also go on to talk about small format hospitals and the parking in the small format hospitals. And it's 6 off-street parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of medical office, plus 1 square feet of square foot, or 1 parking space per inpatient bed. And a key part to our D development district is its multiple uses, and we encourage multiple uses. In this case, since the hospital is 24 hours, the multiple uses, each use on the site where a small format hospital is going to be placed, is going to have to do their own parking, have their own parking demand. If it requires a parking demand study, then the parking demand study will take precedent over any regulations that we have. And the other items are just are more housekeeping items in keeping with the ordinance about making the changes throughout the ordinance. And council member, that's it.
Okay. Well, first of all, does anyone from CVEST want to make comments?
We have Dusty Kirk with us tonight, who has been the attorney for CVEST, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Greg. I'm Dusty Elias Kirk, and I'm the attorney for CVEST. We've been here before talking to you about the need for the small format hospital and the importance to the community. I'm not going to go through everything that Bruce just said because I think it's pretty clear what we're requesting. Why we're requesting it is that there's been really a change in how healthcare is being delivered across the country. And CVEST and its partners have been doing these small format hospitals in the western part of the U.S., and this actually is the first one in the eastern part of the U.S. and in Pennsylvania. So it's a change in how the delivery of health care closer to home, and that's the purpose of it, so that someone won't have to travel so far for an emergency room. So we thank you for your consideration of this text amendment and for taking the time that you've taken with us and your solicitor going through all the details with us. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them.
Does anyone on council have questions? Okay. Not at this time. Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any comments from council on this matter? Any comments from the public? Okay, come on.
Irene Caliendo, 411 Hot Drive. Madam President and council members, thank you for hearing my remarks about this critical matter I'm against changing the zoning code to allow this new and unneeded facility to be built. I'm against allowing such a facility to be built anywhere in McCandless or the North Hills area. Before I elaborate on my reasons why, I think it's pertinent and appropriate to advise council about a few personal facts that get me standing to offer an opinion beyond what has afforded me via my right as a citizen of McCandless. Not only have I been a subscriber to a Highmark Medicare Advantage plan for the last several years, but prior to my retirement, I held the position of Director of Network Development and Provider Contracting with 2 national health plans, Health America Coventry, currently owned by Aetna, and Humana Health. Further, while at Health America, I was the primary negotiator and main provider contact for the multi-million-dollar contracts with both Allegheny Health Network and UPMC Health Network. Consequently, I believe I have an insider's perspective to this situation.
Oh, excuse me, how is this focusing on?
Well, I did understand, Councilman, your original remarks, but I believe this is going to be the only open forum for the public.
Well,
Is
no,
that,
when the land development plan?
Pardon?
When there's a land development plan presented to.
well, but to vote, I mean, just to express our comments and our opinions as to whether we even want this facility.
Well, you'll have to limit, though, to the actual text amendment as to what's being changed. The small format hospital allowed in a development, also the height and the parking. So could you limit it?
But what I'm saying is, are we going to have another opportunity when council votes? I mean, we've been down this road before, councilmen, where a vote's been taken and then we've been told as residents that we aren't able to change the vote legally because we've already given the go-ahead and we can only do tweaks, if you will. And so what I'm saying is there are people in this room that are against this facility at all, and we are trying to stop the ball before it gets any further down the road and before we're told we're unable to offer an opinion on that because council has already given a certain amount of permissions that then require us to go ahead and continue. So that's what I'm saying, because I don't believe that information has been put on the table about really what the consent decree means. I mean, it does not mean that we need more facilities.
Yeah, but I don't see where that goes to the construction of this thing, this small format hospital. Okay.
I think the fact that there's this use is being added to the ordinance is that's probably within the realm of, you know.
Okay, so you say it's okay.
If she doesn't think the use should be added because, you know, it's not a necessary use to be added, it's still, that's pretty much the substance of the text amendment here. So I think she's within the bounds.
Okay, go ahead. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. In my opinion, the few inpatient beds that will be available for minor and routine health issues at the proposed facility, notwithstanding, the terms small format hospital and micro hospital simply are branding and marketing terms for a high-end urgent care facility which will offer duplicative medical services. Emergency care service is available to members of any health plan or no health plan at any hospital, regardless of the provider network. In close proximity, high-quality, in-network outpatient care will remain available for Highmark members beyond June 2019. Having said all of that, I think it's imperative that the petitioners be honest with council about what the consent decree really means for the Highmark members and McCandless citizens and what will occur in June 2019. I believe that a false sense of urgency and a dire picture of adverse impact is being created deliberately to frighten our residents and Highmark's members and to influence council for the sole purpose to have council find in their favor. For example, many of Highmark's members lost access to the UPMC physicians and hospitals on December 31st, 2015. The consent decree, which became effective January 1st, 2016, and will expire in June of next year, provides for only certain categories of people to continue having access to the UPMC flagship facilities and network through June 2019. Categories such as Highmark customers considered to be medically vulnerable, those requiring continuity of care treatment, such as cancer patients, and seniors with a Highmark Advantage plan. So many, if not most, of Highmark's members handled the loss of access to the UPMC network several years ago. Further, a more recent agreement, which became effective in January of 2018, extended the terms of the original consent decree for many UPMC facilities and providers outside of Allegheny County, and certain services and providers within Allegheny County, such as Western Psych Cystic Fibrosis Center of Excellence and Transplants Care. Depending upon the provider, access has been extended until between 2021 and 2025. At the time this extension was signed, Governor Wolf said, "This landmark agreement means consumers of both companies will have in-network access to facilities that provide one-of-a-kind services. This is medical care that simply is not available anywhere else in the region." I believe the governor's statement summarizes the issues well. That issue is residents of Allegheny County have superior access to excellent health care regardless of what medical insurance they have. Building this high-end urgent care facility in an already overbedded community and in an already congested area will not improve or enhance such access. Building this facility will be of no benefit or value added to the current Highmark members or the general population. Building this facility will be of no benefit or value added and may be a detriment to the community and its residents' quality of life. Obviously, I urge the council to deny this request. Thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's it's Abhijit Kulkarni. I'm a longtime resident of 305 Walden Court in the Breckenridge Plan, and I've been a resident of the McCandless community for almost 18 years. And my vote would actually, or my suggestion is that we actually do pass this ordinance. I do agree with it. I think I've seen the township grow over the past 18 years from a small little community now into a large bedroom community of the city, and I've seen a lot of new people come in. I've seen a lot of new development come in. I'm sorry, by the way, I don't have any prepared remarks, and this is just all off the cuff. But I do believe that increasing healthcare access and delivery in the system is important to our neighbors and our community. I think it's critical that we are able to provide healthcare to our patients, or our population, to our neighbors, our friends, our family. We're getting an increasingly older community out here, and I do want to make sure that we have the ability to provide those services out here. I think small format hospitals, I'm not entirely familiar with this concept, but it sounds very, it sounds appropriate for what our needs are, what healthcare in this country is going towards, and I do believe that it's something that we should explore. I think we should consider that, and I really think it'll be a good idea for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I hate public speaking. I really do. I'm Kelly Williams, 604 Victory Road, Pittsburgh, PA, 15237. I have nothing prepared. I came here because I just wanted to hear what's being developed. I've been a nurse for 25 years. I worked at Allegheny General for 20. Now I'm 5 years at Highmark. I reach out to members all the time, consent decree or not, that are vocalizing every day a need to have the right to treatment. They want to be able to go where they feel comfortable. They want to be able to go close to home. So with all respect to what she had to say, I'm living it right now, and I'm talking to the members, and I'm telling you that's what they want. And for me to come up here is a big deal because I hate this whole thing right now. So that's my opinion on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Anyone else?
Arvind Venkat. I live at 105 Breckenridge Drive, also in the Breckenridge development. I'm an 11-year resident of McCandless, and I'm an emergency physician. I practice at Allegheny General, but I can say that I won't be practicing at this facility if it's developed based on the nature of my career. I just want to speak in favor of this proposal. As an emergency physician, I see every day the importance of having access to acute care resources. And I think being part of a growing community like McCandless, there's an absolute need for this. Right now in McCandless, we have access to a wonderful emergency department at UPMC Passamaquoddy, and then a series of urgent cares which are limited in their capability and don't carry the federal obligation to see any patient who presents like a hospital-based emergency department does. By having an additional emergency department with full capabilities in our township, we'd have the ability for all of our residents to have access and to have choices in their health care for that need 24/7. In addition, the idea of a small format hospital is not new in emergency medicine or in this concept. As it was indicated, this is being done in Western states to a great deal to try and increase local access to care. What is going on in emergency care in general is we're seeing more patients who are not being required to stay in the hospital. Only about 80 to 85% of patients who present to an emergency department in this country are discharged. So the idea of a small format hospital where you have a limited number of inpatient beds to provide a local capability, but have a full service emergency department which carries the federal obligation to see any patient who presents, is a highly valuable resource to a community. So I speak as a resident, I speak as an emergency physician who has seen this issue in day-to-day practice, so strongly urge the council to vote in favor of this proposal to provide that additional resource to our residents.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Chuck Parker, 1160 Prince Andrew Court. I've lived there for 25 years. I'm a healthcare architect for an international architectural firm, and these small format hospitals are popping up all over the world. It's the future of healthcare, and I think we should support it. My only questions were with the parking. I didn't hear about requirement for loading docks or ambulance bays. I just want to make sure that's part of the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Charles. Anyone else?
Hi, good evening, Marcia Caliendo, 380 Mohican Avenue. I do oppose the building of this small format hospital because I do believe it is a redundancy of services currently offered by AHN in our area. In the town of McCandless alone, right now we have multiple physician offices. We have the Human Motion Center on Blazer Drive and the Diagnostic and Endoscopy building about a block from where this proposed site will be. A few miles up the road in Pine Township, 5 miles, we have the huge and beautiful AHN Pavilion where surgeries and a host of other services are offered. They are also proposing to build a 100-plus bed facility on that site. So I'm not quite sure why we need a small format hospital when they are having plans of building a larger one 5 miles up the road. I really would like AHN to address what will happen when this building is built and they chose to close the endoscopy center or they choose to close the Human Motion Center. What will happen? We'll have another building, another empty building on McKnight Road. Can they give us assurances that those buildings will not be closed and those part of the business will not be closed? Why isn't building a 160-bed hospital 5 miles up the road sufficient? What will happen if this small format fails? We are an over-bedded county. We don't need any more beds. Are we going to be left with another eyesore if that closes? So I realize and appreciate that your job as council members is not to stop an organization or a business from a bad decision. However, you do have the responsibility not to amend our current zoning ordinances in a rush to vote based on an artificial deadline opposed by AHN before we can come to a sound decision that this is the appropriate thing to do. A strong AHN is crucial in Western Pennsylvania. We need competition, but I don't think this is the way of going about it. So I urge you not to vote for the text amendment. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, George.
Hi, my name is Debbie Lucas, 8757 Breezewood Drive. I am in support of this from the standpoint that 2 years ago, I was very, very sick. At 4 o'clock in the morning, my husband said, "Do you want to go to AGH? We have Highmark Insurance." That's where I should have gone. I literally could not have made it to AGH. I had a cardiac issue. So I chose to go to Passivant just because it was nearer. The whole time I'm in the hospital, I'm worried, are they going to take my insurance? Are they going to take my insurance? The stress of that added to my issue. I really think, yes, we are going to have a hospital built, but I think we need something where people can go. We have UPMC Passivant. We need something for AHN, for Highmark patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Anyone else? Well, Bruce, you?
I have
Okay. So we'll move on to the the next thing on the agenda, and that's the notification of public hearing on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1376, an ordinance to review a zoning code amendment request from Sheets, Inc. to amend conditional use standards to allow 2 service stations at a signalized intersection within residential commercial zoning district is scheduled for Monday, June 25th, 2018. The RC district extends south from the intersection of Prescott Drive and Route 19 to McCandless-Ross boundary line south of Birch Avenue. So it's just a notification that there will be another public hearing, and that's June 25th for 2018 at 7:30 here in this building, here in this room, and that's a Monday, 2 weeks from now. The fourth thing is the review of a land development application of North Allegheny School District to replace the turf and install lighting on the athletic fields adjacent to North Allegheny Intermediate School located at 350 Cumberland Road. Hi, Rob.
We'll need your. I think probably the best place is right here.
Okay.
Have you seen
Look at that magic.
this is for the field, this is for the, this is a big sign. Yeah.
Let's sort of face it. I'll tell you what, maybe we could put it right here. And face it toward everybody. We could try. Yeah, put it up here. I'll put it here, and that way we can sort of face it to council. It'll be close to them.
Are they for the hospital?
Yeah. We haven't done this in a while. I'll do an intro. We have with us tonight, doing the presentation, Rob Gartner from North Allegheny High School, from North Allegheny School District. Bob Bizzuto, who is the athletic director. Where'd he go? There you go. Athletic director for North Allegheny, and Bernie Lamb has been the engineer on this job. And this is resurfacing the fields at NAI, North Allegheny Intermediate Unit, and generally that by itself would not require a full land development other than stormwater management. However, the reason they're here is because they're going to be lit, and we had to go through the review process to make sure not only that the stormwater meets requirements, but also to make sure that the lighting meets the requirements, and also just make everybody aware of what's going on. So at this point, I wanted to turn it over to Rob Gartner.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, council, members of the community. We're here tonight to kind of review with you the proposed improvements at the athletic fields behind the Every High School. This has been a project that Mr. Bizzuto has been advocating for many years. It will be a significant improvement to the facilities that are available, not only to the district's students, but the people who live in the McCandless community. Not only are these fields used by our competitive teams, used by the North Allegheny Soccer Club, the McCandless Athletic Association, Ingmar Franklin Park Athletics, so these improvements will be beneficial to everyone in the community. What you see before you is the current layout of the fields behind NAI. Just for an orientation, this is the intermediate high school here. Cumberland Road is off the sheet. McKnight Elementary School here. Carson Middle School is up on the hill above. We have the football field. We have a baseball field in the back corner. Softball field here closer to the high school. And then a soccer field that is not lined but is actually running in this location, which would be to the east, right, north, south, east of the other field. So that's the current configuration. These are all natural surface fields, so they do take a lot of wear and tear from, again, not only the schools teams, but the community use, and that does create some problems with regards to the ongoing maintenance and operations. So our proposed plan is to basically resurface this remove the existing natural surface and install an AstroTurf artificial surface over this entire area, but also reconfigure the field layouts to improve their operation. And I'll just go over those real quick. Again, the football field stays in its current location. That is striped and utilized not only for football, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey. So that's a multi-sport field. Again, in the same spot inside the track. The baseball field stays in its current location, which would be to the south of the school. We did make one change in the layout of the fields. The softball field moves from, again, to the east of the football field. It moves over towards McKnight. That addresses some issues with sunlight, with the students and athletes playing in the afternoon with the sun. And what we did basically is we flipped the softball and the soccer fields so that they're it's the same amount of area, we just put the fields in a different spot. You can also see that we've been able to overlay on top of the softball field another soccer field, so there actually could be 2 soccer field games, full size, going on at the same time. So again, it's the same area, just a reconfiguration of the fields, just how we can put the stripes on them. We are showing the potential for, bleacher pads. We won't necessarily have all the bleachers on day one, but we are going to have the opportunity to put bleachers up for the community members to sit and watch their children play. We also will be adding new dugouts for the baseball field. There's currently 2 dugouts there, but we're going to reconfigure those and move them a little bit. Then we're actually adding dugouts for the softball field. There's currently no dugouts for the softball field, and we want to bring that into compliance with Title IX. So as part of this reconfiguration, we would add dugouts. So any questions on the field layout before I flip this page? Yes, sir.
Is the baseball field, would you speak to the size of the baseball field? Is it as large as it could be?
It's 300, what was the?
Yeah, it's 300 to the right field line, so.
It's what, 200?
300 feet.
It's
300.
basically the same dimension as it is today.
Yeah, it is.
Exact same, in left field, left center, straightaway center.
So it's large enough to accommodate any baseball games that anyone contemplates playing there.
Absolutely.
The only reason I mention that is I've seen situations where after something like this is done, they say, gee, we gotta dig out the side of the hill or do something.
Well, there is a constraint because this is a hillside falling over here, so we really, this is fixed. So we are pretty much putting it into the maximum size capability that we have, but we can't, it is what it is. We can't really do anything more to it.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner.
You're welcome.
Rob, there's the lights around the bus parking lot. How much higher are these lights going to be than?
Okay, I didn't get to the lights.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was going to go to their next.
Okay, yeah.
So as part of this improvement, we also are installing light poles. This will improve the ability to use these fields, of course, later in the day. We have added light poles that would illuminate the football field, and then light poles that would go around the perimeter of this area to light these baseball, soccer, and softball fields. The light poles, I believe, are 85 feet tall.
80 feet tall.
80 feet, I'm sorry. They're using LED technology for the lighting, so they're very focused. And there are how many? 12 poles around the perimeter.
Do you know how high the ones around the parking? I mean, the bus parking.
I think they're all going to be about the same.
I mean, around the bus, the ones that are currently there.
Oh, these bus, ones out here?
Yeah,
Oh, these are 20 or 30 feet tall now. They're just a regular street.
okay.
But we're adding, these lights would be added to illuminate this field primarily. And then we are looking at the potential to add a couple lights on the back that would replace the existing lower pole lights here and actually give us better lighting on this side of the bus parking lot. That's kind of like an add-on. It's not necessarily a done deal yet, but that's an option we're considering. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
At that height, how much of an effect are they going to have on Cumberland Road?
The photometrics show that no light will spill off of the district's property.
it's on the back
Because we are pretty far off of the road, and actually NAI sits above the fields, if you can imagine how they set up.
Right, it's about 2
yeah.
stories, but it's certainly not 80 feet.
Well, we're showing the light level at 0.3 foot candles right here at the edge of the parking lot. So,
Yeah, there's lighting in this parking lot that exists already, so there'll be more light cast from this parking lot than from these fields. The cutoff, we're at 0.2 at this area, and there's,
you're still pretty far.
Yeah.
Cumberland Road would be.
and you don't even make it.
Because I can actually see things in my yard from a mile away from the high school. When they leave their lights on at night, I can see.
Totally different lighting system.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a mercury vapor spotlight.
What is the ordinance about 100 yards? That lights, can't be seen from 100 yards, the town ordinance?
The regulation is 0.5 foot candles within 15 feet of a residential property line. So this doesn't have any effect. Our ordinance, this more than exceeds our ordinance. We're in great shape with the ordinance.
There is an ordinance about visualizing lighting from 100, residential from 100 yards.
Right, but there's nothing.
And that's what I would want to know, what is around this. I don't know the area well
Well,
enough to know.
you see the football
if there
field, the
is-
black lines of the football field, those would be 100 yards. How the shape of the football field, can you see it?
Right, but if the lights are that high,
Right.
do they have shields putting
Well,
the lights down?
The lights on this side are all facing in. So if you're in the residential side, you're not gonna see, you'll see the back of the light fixture.
How do they compare to what we have out in Public Works?
Oh, I have no idea.
I can share with you that the lighting technology today.
Bob, you want to talk up here?
the
This is
light-
Bob Bizzuto.
The lighting technology today is much more advanced than it was, years before. You're talking about any time that you're talking about LED and you're talking about designs by different lighting companies and so forth, they'll talk about 0% spillage, okay? So it going beyond where that's at. They will have caps on it. They're actually gold, that I actually have one in my office. The second thing is in taking a look at, and that's one of the things we want to be good neighbors, taking a look at the difference between, the houses that are there and so forth. I was told by the company is that you would basically see as much light as you see with the moon. Okay, so again, we're talking about 0% spillage. We're taking a look at everything else that particular way. So we want to be good neighbors as well. And our hopes that very soon that we will be doing the same thing on the Nash campus as well with LED.
Okay, is there a way to make sure there's some sort of a timer on these lights so that they don't
Yeah.
stay on all night?
Oh, absolutely, no. Our
Because
goal,
the ones up there, I've been out 3 in the morning, they've been out.
well,
Not this, I've, in the
Okay,
past.
There's
but-
sometimes we leave them on because of some issues with vandalism, but normally they're mostly turned
Yeah,
off.
I wouldn't say, I haven't seen it this year, but
Okay.
last year or so, I'm
There
like,
have-
it's 3 in the morning, there's nobody playing football.
No, there are instances though, we do have some issues that we have to maintain.
Is
some
it
lighting.
football lighting to see that?
They leave a few of the lights on, not the whole, I don't
Just the
believe
ones
it.
facing me?
I don't know, I can't say I saw it, but I mean, I'm not gonna say, we've had issues where we've had some vandalism, and we've worked with the police department, and then we've left some lights on for security, but again, I can't speak to your particular situation, but, so I don't wanna tell you that, but these are scheduled to go off, based on the schedule, I think Mr. Bizzuto had
no,
9:30.
9:30 to 10 o'clock at the latest. And we're
So
using
we
this,
could put a condition on it that they would be off by 10 o'clock?
We're fine.
Unless,
Yeah, you're fine with that?
No, unless
Absolutely.
they need
Our
an
intention really is to get all of our teams practicing so that the teams that are in season, that are finished by 7:30, unless we have a game there that particular way. This isn't meant to be high school like we have at Nash. This is really just the overall stuff, so that's not an issue to us.
Okay.
That's not an issue.
There
We want
aren't
to
a
be
lot
good
of
neighbors.
residents in that area, on
Right
the other
across the
side
street
of,
of Cumberland.
on the other side of
Right.
Cumberland.
Yeah, our-
But the field is behind.
But those are really, really
right,
tall
but
lights.
those lights are 40
Yeah, but it's
feet
all
off the roof.
designed so that you know that it goes down.
They face down,
Right.
don't they? The lights?
Yes.
And I know a lot of lights are supposed to go
Ideally.
down, but in fact, they really have a lot of scatter. Now, maybe new lights are better, but there are a lot of lights that have a lot of scatter.
They are. These are all designed. They can tell you the foot candles on every square inch of that field. And we have to maximize that so that, again, that we know exactly the foot candles that's going to be in the middle of the soccer field, in left field of the baseball field, due to safety. So it's much more advanced.
And
Chairman
these are,
Zachary, I'm sorry, I wanted to say something whenever you're done. If I cut you off, please proceed.
I wanted to ask, you're gonna be putting AstroTurf in there, artificial turf in there,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yes.
What do you say to, I looked this up, and we know everything in the internet, of course, is true. But there is apparently a very large increase in serious injuries, with ACL and MCL injuries associated with AstroTurf as opposed to regular turf, which has like more minor injuries like sprains.
No, you're gonna find that the studies, and I would be more than happy to follow you around the district to take a look at the condition of our natural turf fields. You're going to see that again, in terms of safety, one of the things that you're gonna talk about with turf, that it is consistent, it's predictable, and it's the most safe in terms of athletic fields. You can get ACL injuries on anything, but I can assure you that a field that is safe and predictable, as what we're going to have, the number of injuries, okay, compared to natural turf injuries will be lower. And one of the things with this, and I can assure you, this product is 400,000 square feet of turf. We have a pad in all 400,000 square feet, which is underneath the turf. You would be surprised the number of schools that do not have a pad or an E-layer under their turf, that it's basically under stone, it's under a geotex, and then the carpet goes on. Ours, all 400,000 square foot. I've never, in my 39-year career, have ever put in an athletic field with turf without at least a pad or an E-layer. But I can assure you that there'll be less injuries. The old AstroTurf that they talked about was the AstroTurf 12-2000 was more abrasive. And what you had is you had more injuries and things like that, scratches and so forth, that would become infected, okay, because kids don't like to clean and scrub and so forth that particular way, and that's what brought on with MRSA and things like that. That kind of turf is only really sold today with field hockey, the sport of field hockey, because of the speed of that particular game. But this is a product that has rubber and sand, and it has a pad on it. And I can assure you it'll be more safe than some of the conditions of our athletic fields if you went out there today. And that was one of the reasons why we've been working toward this product. It is safe for all kids to go on, but anybody can get hurt in any situation.
May I proceed?
I wanted to clarify before we go on, if I may. I wanted to go back to Councilmember Zachary's question about the light and the light source. That was brought up at the Planning Commission, and as I understand it, from the residential perspective over at Cumberland, there are only two lights that would be visible from Cumberland. The source of the light would be visible from Cumberland.
The two lights.
And I think that's what your question was, the source of the
Our
light.
solicitor actually has found this for us, and it
Yeah.
says, any light source within 100 feet, I was wrong about the yards, of a residential lot shall not be directly visible from the said lot.
Yeah, we took it probably, it sounds like we probably took it 10 times that
Yeah, I was
much.
gonna say, that's
And
a
we
big-
were
That's
looking at
actually
the,
to make sure.
and we asked that question, and I believe Rob has a pretty good answer for that.
Yeah, the only two lights that are facing the residential side, where you would actually see the light source, are on this far end of the fields, these two right here. So that's 100 yards, I don't know, I can't imagine how many
Yeah, it's at least 300 yards to the closest house.
It's much more than 100 feet, I would guess.
Okay.
All the other lights are pointing this way, or this way, which are contained really on our property. And one of the things that I think Bob pointed out is this piece of paper has the foot candle levels, and the way these lights are so well aimed is here at the home plate of the softball field. Okay, it's 51.2 foot candles. If you're familiar, there's a gravel trail. It goes to 21, and then about 20 or 30 feet at 7.3 foot candles. That's how focused this light level can be. So, and then as you go up, by the time you get to this driveway here, it's 0.3. So that really tells you how concentrated, I guess I would call the light. There is very little spill from this type of light fixture. So, and again, I'm not a lighting expert. I'm just reading the numbers off the drawing.
My question pertained to lighting. A few moments ago, I thought someone said that the lights are designed to automatically shut off at a certain time.
They will have the ability to have a control on them. And actually, go ahead.
Well, then there was a but there that sometimes the lights are left on for more extended periods than it would be automatically shut off because, I guess, to prevent vandalism. Or
We've had to do that in some other cases at the high school. I will not disagree.
Should our zoning or the ordinance, whatever ends up being done here, provide for such a thing so that we have a legal basis to
Well, again, I see our great chief sitting in the back, and again, we work with him on many issues, and we work with them collectively, and it does improve the ability for officers to keep their eyes on things. And again, I'm not going to say particular times of the year, but it is graduation.
I do realize that there's an issue. All I'm suggesting as we consider this issue. I'm not.
No, I appreciate that. That's a true statement. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's kind of an auxiliary to that, is if we're having a baseball game, the lights would only be on for the baseball field. You know, this is not a turn every light on every night situation. So, I mean, there might be a baseball game tonight, there might be a football game tomorrow, there might be a softball. So it's not the whole place is going to be lit up every night just to light it up. This is actually set up and zoned so that the lights that are required for each field area can be individually controlled. So that is another part of this. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you what happens with the heavy rains? Where, like, do you have issues with like flooding or anything on the field, or where does the water go? I guess
The new field.
Yeah, for the new
new field will have a stormwater control system, and actually Mr. Lamb can speak to that in greater detail. But there is a sub-grade stone drainage trench drain, I'm going to call it for a simplistic term, where the water will percolate in. It'll infiltrate into the ground, and then any excess would then be drained off through the stormwater system. It's actually, I think we said it's even better than what we have today because it's uncontrolled today. But we're still working on the final approval of that. But yeah, there is a stormwater management component to this because it is a different type of surface.
If I can intervene slightly and try to answer it a little differently. They have the ability to store water and meet the regulations at McCandless Crossing. Where the bend is on Duncan Avenue on the west side, that was turned into a dam. And part of that is to control stormwater for North Allegheny, and it's also to control the water from the housing development across the street from North Allegheny. This is a completely self-contained stormwater management system. So everything that they're doing is being controlled on this site. The backup would be the dam, but that's not even entering into the calculation. They didn't do that. So, but it's also designed so that the field itself won't flood and will drain rather quick. I don't know how fast it'll drain, but it'll drain fairly quickly. So that's one of the things that we spent a lot of time and are still spending time on. I guess I should point out ahead of time that we don't have that approved yet because when Bernie did the infiltration tests that were required for this, that it caused a whole redesign of the system. So it was redesigned. We're happy with the concept of it, but we got to run the number. Andy has to verify the numbers that Bernie presented. So great question.
That would be Andy Banfield.
Andy
the town's
Banfield,
stormwater engineer is reviewing this.
There you go.
Have all residents that would be affected by this, even remotely, received written notice of this?
No, they haven't. It would be difficult to do that because I'm afraid that, as Steve pointed out, the glow from, how many miles away are you from the,
I'd guess
although
about a
it's
mile.
different, it's, the glow is something that's to be considered for this. And I'll never forget when, I think it was before Schultz Ford went in, I got a call from somebody who lived over 2 miles away that was complaining about the lights that went in. As Rob pointed out, this is entirely different lighting system. We have really no way of knowing who's going to be affected. And we don't expect anybody will be directly affected. However, there is the glow that I've measured at people's houses when they've complained, and there's no, take away the ambient lighting, there's no impact. There's nothing measurable, but you can still look at your newspaper and maybe be able to see it, but you can't measure that light with a light meter. So to answer your question, no, they haven't, and I'm not sure how we would do it.
I feel like the residents that are at least around
On
the perimeter
Cumberland.
need to have some written notice about what's going on, so they can have, so they can come to council and have some input about it, and have their questions answered.
If I may interject here, I mean, these are the residents here. This is Cumberland right here that we're talking about here. This is Lowe's right here, which Lowe's sits up actually a couple hundred feet higher than this site here. So the impact, from this area here relative to these residents, I think is a lot greater from Lowe's. Now, there are some apartments over in this area. There is a little bit of a hill here, but I think that if you try to think about what the glow is that people are getting from Lowe's, that's quite a bit higher than what they would be getting from this facility here. Something else to think about as well.
And actually, as you go along, you have that apartment building here. As you get to the housing, the building is actually now in front of you again. So you have that, I'm gonna call it a shield, but the building is, the NAI structure is actually blocking. Now, I can look up and see the moon, but what I'm getting at is the building is actually setting up higher than this field. So that's actually acting as a block too.
And it's higher than the lights, it's higher than the
Yeah,
lights.
the-
higher than the
those
lights.
lights
So
are
that's
40
But it
feet
still
higher
matters.
than that roof.
It's still, it's in your, you would have to look over the top of the building potentially, and depending on how close you are or how far you are, the angle would put you either seeing the building or maybe not even seeing the light because of the cutoff and the height of the building. I'm not saying it's.
Is the glow from a light that's turned off?
No, no.
Oh, no, so it has to be, so
Be turned
it's,
on.
and then we put a condition that they would be turned off by 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock would be that would give us time to have the game end, people. I just want to make sure kids can get to their cars and
Right,
stuff
yeah.
before we're
Right.
looking to switch off. But yeah, our scheduled time would be later than 9:30.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a use question, with the upgraded fields and the lighting and the night activities, will sound systems be involved and added to this complex?
I don't anticipate that.
Right now, no, it's not going to be anything like, the high school and so forth. If it would be a very small public address system for that field and that field only, but no, there's nothing that's planned that's going to be a major public address system.
Any other questions? Do I have to show anything else? Do I see anything?
Does the lighting conform to the ordinance, Bruce?
Yes, it does.
Any comments, other comments from council? I'd like to open up to the public now, even though we're supposed to wait till the end. Does the public have any comments on this?
They don't know about it.
Let's go to the next item, okay?
Okay, thanks for your
Rob.
time.
Thanks, Rob, Bob, and Ernie. Okay, it's to discuss the priority of potential zoning amendments. We have things like election signs, there's signs put on right-of-ways and public property. We have the shooting range, we want to maybe put limitations on shooting ranges, future shooting ranges anyhow. The medical marijuana, which we hope to get a pending ordinance this month. Omnibus amendments, which I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, the omnibus is essentially a lot of cleanup items that we picked up over the years. We're gonna have one ordinance that has, maybe 15, 20 sections that will just kind of correct things that Bruce, mostly Bruce and I, working with Bruce a little bit, have picked out that just need to be kind of tweaked. Maybe they don't work so well in conjunction with another code provision. So just kind of through experience, we've realized, oh geez, we should go, when we have time, we should go back and tweak that to make sure it all fits better. And so this is kind of a collection of really kind of minor changes that we would pass all in one ordinance. So that's the concept of the omnibus.
And then regular signs and short-term rentals, I guess that's a result of the slice of life case?
Partly, yes. I can take a quick run through each one of these ordinances if you think that'd be helpful. I don't want to, burden council by taking up too much time, but the kind of the concept, if I could, is, there's a lot of changes to the zoning ordinance that have been, at least discussed or brought up before council. And we have kind of two major considerations. One being, what is most important for council? What do you want us to try to address the most quickly? What's the most critical? And then also there's a cost element to it. There's a allocated portion of the town budget, and that's more of a Bruce and Toby question. They'd be able to answer and maybe reach, but a portion of that legal budget essentially is associated with zoning. And so, taking on all these different zoning amendments all at once, or even all in the same year potentially, could exhaust that budget, could require some reallocation, or I'm not exactly sure. Again, some of that would be internally. So the reason I put the memo together is to say, look, here's what I'm understanding or we're hearing that have been raised by at least one or two council people, issues that need to be addressed. And so I'll just run through, if I could, but keep those kind of dual interests of both cost and importance in mind. And then what I'd like to come away with is, kind of maybe a revised list of 1 through 8. What do we want to jump on? What do we think can be put off a little bit? So that's kind of the idea here. So the temporary and election signs, and I'll also give you the status of these because some of these are already in progress. So temporary and election signs, this would not necessarily be a zoning amendment. This would be under the general offenses code most likely, because regulating temporary signs through a zoning ordinance is not really practical, because you have to give a 30-day appeal period. Temporary signs by their nature, that kind of defeats the purpose. So the city of Pittsburgh has a ordinance that they passed a while back trying to address this, and the concept is regulating within the rights of way and on town property these signs that come up, temporary election signs, contractor signs, Bob's Carpentry, whatever, who's working on the house. And so the idea would be to address clutter primarily and safe site distances at intersections. So we are, a good ways into that. Ms. Zachary had mentioned that to me as a particular concern of hers. We got started and got a framework together based loosely on that city ordinance. So that's the first one I addressed in the memo. The second is shooting ranges. And shooting ranges really arose, everyone who certainly is aware of the Impacts facility that was approved a couple years ago and recently was issued a permit pursuant to a number of conditions. What this shooting range ordinance would be kind of twofold. Number one, it would codify the permitting process and include a lot of the conditions that we added for Impacts that they worked with us on and agreed to as far as safe operation of a shooting range facility. The zoning aspect would be more of, all right, where in the town would we want to allow future shooting ranges? Now, this wouldn't affect Impacts itself, it's already there, so this is prospective. But where in the town would we want to have other shooting ranges if there would be another? And under what conditions? Would it be a conditional use that came before council? And under what conditions would that type of use be permitted? So that's the shooting ranges, and again, that's something, because we did all the work with Impacts, that's also, would not be very costly or time consuming to put together to finish off. Medical marijuana, as Mr. Walkowski said, that has been discussed the last couple of planning commission meetings. Bruce, is that correct?
Yes.
And we received some recommendations that Chris Volz from my office and Bruce have been digesting. And I think that one is in position if council wants to take a look at this most recent draft. We can have that in council's packets for next meeting the agenda review, and then we could pass a resolution or prepare a resolution that could be passed at the end of the month. That would be what's called a pending ordinance resolution, and I think most of the council is familiar with that, but what that essentially does is put the public on notice that, hey, this is an ordinance that's under consideration by town council. It's not officially adopted as a zoning amendment, but it does have the effect acting as a shield to prevent someone from coming and filing an application and saying, well, too bad you didn't pass your zoning amendment fast enough. This would essentially put it into effect, put it in place kind of immediately. So that's something the council wants us to do. Again, we're very close on that. Well, what happened was we prepare a pending ordinance resolution for June 25th, and then we would essentially start the actual formal zoning amendment process the following month, and then, we'd have a public hearing like we had tonight for this zoning amendment, ultimately vote on it probably in September, I would guess.
May I ask a question on item number 3?
Sure.
At this point, as you're of course aware of the supremacy clause issue, the states and local governmental agencies are passing laws that are technically illegal from a federal standpoint. Is any action being taken on that? Is people just ignoring it? Is that all it is?
I mean, it's a political football, as you're probably aware, just by, reading the national news, whether the Attorney General has one stance, the President may have a different stance, and you're not really sure from day to day, to be honest with you. At least I can't tell exactly who's for what when. But when it comes to these types of zoning regulations, Pennsylvania passed the Medical Marijuana Act in 2016, and at least, and the local regulation of it, this is not as far as criminal code, that would be at the state and federal level, but this is essentially saying, all right, our state government has determined that this is a lawful use, whether it is and whether, these cannabis-related companies and dispensaries and growing facilities are running, there's an element of risk for sure with all those folks. From the town's perspective, what you're trying to do is determine, where in the town does it make sense to allow these dispensaries? Where in the town does it make sense to allow a growing facility, if one would come here? And I think that would be appropriate just to kind of maintain some consistency with that. Yeah.
Real quick, and
Sure.
I realize we don't want to spend too much time on this individual issue, but I've heard that banks will not provide financial services for any of these organizations,
That's
which to me
correct.
is mind.
Yeah, these federally chartered banks, they feel that they would be risking regulatory.
What about credit card companies?
I think that's probably the same issue.
And so
Imagine
this
a lot
would
of these
be.
are cash deals.
Yeah, this especially a cash deal, which puts, what you want to do is keep in a lighted area that's well-traveled.
Right, now the Medical Marijuana Act, and we've talked about this at a couple council meetings, is very restrictive on the ability of local municipalities to place additional regulations on, these types of uses. So essentially, you treat dispensaries like pharmacies, you treat growing facilities like industrial uses. But that said, your point of, maybe finding zoning districts where it makes sense to have, these types of retail, the retail aspect is the dispensary, the industrial aspect is the growing facility. And the way that the zoning amendment has been prepared, I think as council is aware, is that we would be creating a C6 zoning district that would be focused on the industrial uses, and that would be, the growing facility would be
Growing
permitted there.
processor.
And I believe C3 and C4.
And we're taking a look at RC.
And RC for the dispensaries.
It was kicked out because it's within, we can't put it anywhere in an RC without it being within 1,000 feet of a daycare.
Or
Or school, but if the state waives that, just like they waived the leaf thing, we want to be able to have that in it.
Right, and certainly that's something we could address in the final version. But I think, the idea of the pending ordinance, resolution is to get, what this framework on the books so that, even if we don't have all the specifics locked down, we have some regulations in place that would deal with, applicants that would come in the interim.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, that was helpful.
Sure. We talked about the omnibus, again, just a number of cleanup items. That has been, to be honest, Bruce, that's been in the works for about 5 years or more possibly. Just as we've caught things, we've kind of added them to that
It
list.
just keeps growing and growing and
Right,
growing.
and we've gotten it to a point now where we think that there's enough there that we can pass. There may be multiple omnibus zoning amendments that ultimately get passed, but I think we're at a point now where there's some things, some lower hanging fruit that we'd like to knock out. And, again, I think that wouldn't take a whole lot of time to kind of boil that down to some key items that we want to address. So that's the omnibus. Signs is something that, as I put in the memo, that is something that at there's a recent Supreme Court decision, not as recent anymore, called Gilbert, that really changed the landscape of how municipalities can regulate signs. The sign ordinance as adopted already in McCandless is very comprehensive, it's very specific, it's very lengthy, and bringing that and ensuring it's fully compliant and possibly adding and removing various provisions that might make sense, the council might want, that's a big project. That's something that is, it's going to be time consuming, it's going to be fairly expensive. I don't think there's necessarily anything that's dramatically wrong with the current sign ordinance, but every municipality really in a country, not just in Pennsylvania and not just in Allegheny County, is examining their sign ordinances to make sure that they've addressed these constitutional type issues that have been raised. So that to me, and again, this is up to you as council, but that to me is kind of maybe a longer range project that again, is going to be.
But do you think it affects commercial signs?
I do.
Oh,
Yeah,
you do?
there's an interplay with commercial, and, you can still regulate commercial more than you can non-commercial signs. But, it's, to be honest, to start going down that road, it's extremely complex. We could put some memos together. I think we probably have memos in the past we may have provided. But I think that would be, something that would require a lot to digest, probably more so than, we want to do at this meeting right now. Short-term rentals. This is the Airbnb situation, and I'm not sure, frankly, where council is on wanting to, try to dive into the regulating this particular use. It's something that is it's probably the biggest issue our firm is seeing right now, kind of across the board, that all municipalities seems to be a hot button issue. So we are currently working up regulations for a number of our municipalities, and had previously, in response to a request by the town, had started a framework of regulations out here in response to some complaints in years past. So that one, I think you'll experience some savings because we're doing this ordinance for everybody. So it's, that, and that will make it a lot more efficient, obviously. So if it's, but the specifics as to how, tightly you want that to regulate that. And again, for those who aren't aware, this is essentially short-term renting of single-family use in a residential neighborhood is primarily where we get the biggest complaints.
Well, we currently have in our ordinance, I hate to would take too much time, but we currently have in our ordinance that they can have up to 2 boarders in R1 or R2, and I don't see what this really.
Well, a boarder, I think if you look at the definition, this isn't exactly a good fit for a boarder. The border regulations, to be honest, probably need to be amended anyway. That may even be part of the omnibus that we've looked at and realized that there's a need for a change. But it's kind of a square peg, round hole the way it's currently set up. I don't think it's a good fit to try to regulate what's going on as far as this kind of sharing economy, short-term rental. So that's a good point. We have, we've used that regulation in the past, and effectively, I think, but it's just not quite, as specific as we probably want it to be. Chickens and bees. Chickens and bees is a little less hot button type issue, but certainly an issue that's being explored in by a lot of our municipal clients. And as I said in my memo, this is something where there's a lot of kind of samples out there that this would be something that I don't think we want to jump in as far as Tucker and start preparing something. I think this would make more sense if council's interested to maybe have Bruce, or we can certainly work with Bruce to pull some other regulations about chicken and beekeeping, give that to the planning commission, let them chew on that a little bit and see what might make sense. Then when they have a framework there, bring it back. We can work with Bruce and turn that into a zoning amendment. So if there is interest there, I think that would be my recommended process as to how that would work. Tiny houses, I didn't exactly realize was a thing to regulate until it was brought to my attention. So I know there's a television show about tiny houses, and I believe that
it's a hit.
And there was there a tiny house at one time in McCandless?
Only as part of a TV show.
Okay. So.
What is the definition of a tiny house?
It's a house but smaller. Very
1,000 square feet?
I don't know.
No.
I think like 400. I think it's 400 square feet.
They get below 6.
4.
5.
They get down to 4 or
somewhere in
5.
there. It would be imagined, you'd want to set a range probably, but
So I wouldn't fit.
before somebody plops one down, in a neighborhood,
So if that's something that council wants, I don't have much information about that. We'd have to explore that, and that might be one we'd want to pull regulations from elsewhere. So, sorry to be long-winded there, but that was a fair amount to cover.
Do we allow them now?
I don't
Don't
think
prohibit.
they're
We
addressed.
We don't
not
regulate
addressed,
them
so
one
it
way or
means
the
it would
other,
be
so
allowed.
yes.
So if someone wanted one, they could put one in.
As long as they meet the building code and, setbacks and everything else, right?
A lot of them don't want to meet the building code, and that's the issue.
I don't see a problem with this on you.
Once if you're closing the committee meeting, then you're allowed public comment on all items.
Yeah.
I know Ms. Cook was gonna make a comment.
in terms of moving forward, is there, if we add the element of cost, it sounds like, other than the omnibus, which has some components that I know you've worked on, because you've been attacking that over time, if council, that's almost something that the administration, that's been our venture. We think that's a good idea, and occasionally there's been a complaint. Fencing stands out as one area that's been an ongoing source of some complaints, so that we think that should be upgraded. So the point there is, I think we could carve out some sections of the omnibus as you suggested. Signs, as you pointed out, would probably be a pretty expensive and time-consuming venture. But in terms of cost, I just want to point out that we've modified Tucker Aaronsburg's retainer considerably. Under the retainer section, there was $97,000 budgeted, and we project to spend probably through the end of the year about $24,000, because the retainer was modified in February. So some of what Tucker has been doing for us has now appears in other programs in the budget, and zoning is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest example. So we've spent $25,200 already under the zoning program. $35,000 was budgeted. So ostensibly, we have $9,800 left in that area. But I think if council knows that, it put on notice, as we talked about when we passed last year's budget, that when I see something, or our finance office sees something, we're approaching extremis, or we're going to hit the amount budgeted. That's what I'm pointing out. We could go over the zoning program budget specifically, but we do have funds under the retainer that we could use if we wanted. We would keep council apprised once we would hit the $35,000 mark. Should we keep going? Because what we would be doing is we would be spending that money under the program. That's the way our budget works. But we would be attributing it to the monies that we have available. Because when we rebalance the budget in November, that would be one of the areas we probably would, if we go over budget in this area, that we would address. So I think that rather than think that cost makes it prohibitive to do this work, I don't think it does, is my point. So I think we could, so my recommendation would be, from a cost standpoint, maybe demote signs for the time being, basically address almost all the rest of this work, a segment of the omnibus.
Avoid sign, you said.
Avoid signs.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Put it as a second tier. See where we are with all the other work.
Yeah,
and just keep track of it and give regular
push chickens
reports.
and bees up there.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I've had more people ask for chickens than anything else on this list.
We've got a couple of things that are well worked and almost done.
Well, exactly.
And I would be for finishing what we've already worked on and almost done. I think the medical marijuana, we could get into trouble if we didn't get that done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Right, because
I
anybody
agree.
could come in. So I definitely think that's a high priority.
So we want to have that pending ordinance resolution for the end of the month?
Right.
I
mean,
think so.
Again, it's
Yes,
pretty
get it-
much,
get it
it's done, and again, it can be tweaked as we actually adopt the amendment itself, but this puts something in place.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's an easy one.
yeah, that's an easy one.
The temporary and election signs, again, the framework is there. My colleagues helped me out with that, but I don't think it's far from being done. But is that something that is more important than shooting ranges, is less important? Are shooting ranges even an issue going forward?
I think shooting range would be good to get done
It's close.
if it's close and
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's gonna be discussion, and when I say close on these things, keep in mind that close as far as having an initial draft. It may come to council, it may go to a public hearing, it may go sideways, it may change 10 different times. So, you know, shooting, you know, I don't know if there's gonna be consensus as to where shooting ranges make sense to go, or under what conditions, under what. So, again, it's one thing to have the initial draft, and we can have that, you know, within, I would say, you know, certainly 6 weeks or so.
And those are for future ones, not the ones we
Right.
the one we have now.
It's
Right.
twofold,
Future.
isn't it, Gavin?
This
There's
one-
there's a zoning aspect, but then there's the general,
Yes,
general
we'll
code.
be updating our permit process in the general offenses code as well.
I think we should codify that, because we had to
I agree.
patch it together for the impacts and then,
Right.
and.
I would be surprised if anybody wanted to come in with a shooting range the way Impacts was attacked. I would be extremely surprised
I
if
think we
anyone
need
else
to be
came in.
ready and not go through this again.
Okay, so that's a move forward on both aspects, both the zoning and permitting then. And just kind of, not jump to the top necessarily, but
Shooting
continue,
range.
continue working on
I
it.
think so.
Signs we're gonna delay.
Right.
Chickens and bees and tiny houses are gonna be punted to the
We
planning
can-
commission.
Yeah, that's good.
That sounds good.
The omnibus, you know, maybe we get to a point, fences is included, in the current
Fences
draft.
is included, like
Fences-
batteries?
Fences are included, yes. So, we can have some form of that, again, that's probably about the same time frame as shooting ranges, so I can
But
move that forward.
if you're saying there's a list on that, are we able to pick and choose those that we want to work on?
Let me suggest that we kind of put a stop where we are now, present that to council. It's not gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be very controversial type hot button issues. It's really, you know, helping Bruce, you know, make it more workable, you know, as far as on a day-to-day basis, what he sees, what he needs to make it work. So that leaves temporary and election signs, which again, is not a zoning amendment per se. Eventually, some of those provisions would be worked into the comprehensive sign ordinance that's on delay for right now. But if that's something, I know that election season obviously coming up, if that's a concern, we can. You know,
Thursday still has signs up, at least 4 signs in McCandless that I've seen within the last week.
The grass cutters are coming through, there's metal everywhere in the streets, the drains are clogged up with signs.
Yeah, and again, this would not be regulating signs on private property.
Right.
This is signs in
No,
the right
these
of
are on
way,
McCandless
and signs
property.
on town property.
Can we make that number 4?
That sounds like a great idea.
How about number 4?
Sure.
And that's it.
Okay, so we have medical marijuana is number 1.
Yep.
We have shooting range is number 2. We have omnibus number 3. And where does that leave us on short-term rentals? Do we want to do anything? Do we want to do
Put it with
something later?
chickens and bees. Put it down there with chickens and bees.
Okay. So
Haven't
maybe
we
we'll,
already had issues on that though?
there have
Yeah,
been,
we should, yeah.
there have been complaints on that. One option we could do is when we have kind
Both
of.
directions, there've been complaints, people who want them
Yes,
and
correct.
can't,
Right.
and people who
There's people
don't
on both
want them.
sides of this issue,
That's
no
right.
question about it. What we could do is when we have kind of a template set of regulations that are maybe working or being adopted somewhere else, I can provide those to council for some input. How about that?
Sounds
I'm
good.
not good.
Sounds good.
Well, Greg, you need direction, don't you? Or Gavin, I'm sorry. You need direction from us as to what we want to do before you start writing an ordinance on. I mean, do we want Airbnb? In my neighborhood, in 7th Ward, there have been a couple of instances where people just get enraged because, I would say defiantly to Bruce, they just go ahead and do it. He tells them not to, and they say, well, we don't care what you say. And they rent their place out. And we had a terrible problem with boarders.
Yeah, so let me suggest that the time for that discussion would be, you know, when I have that template ready, I'll put it in front of council, and then there can be discussion then as to, all right, do we want something, do we want to go heavy, do we want to go light?
Well, I was just suggesting that you might benefit from some general direction. If you don't need it, if you can draft without general direction, that's fine.
I guess I'm just not sure we're gonna get consensus
Yeah,
general direction
okay.
sitting up here.
Put something
right
in
now.
front of us and we'll see where
That's,
we're
I
at.
think that maybe is the easiest.
Just a
way to
starting
do it.
point.
Yeah.
Okay. I like
Okay,
it.
well, again, thank you
Sounds
for
good.
indulging me there, with some
Okay.
important stuff.
Dusty, did you have comments you want to make? We were open the comments to
I
the
just
public.
was wondering that, you know, if
Could you-
the hearing was closed
Could you
and
come-
when you were
Come to the
likely to
microphone.
vote. You're going to go to the microphone? Thank you. I was just wondering when the hearing was closed and when it would next be
I think it was
addressed for a vote.
7:50. I think it was 7:50 PM, your hearing, the hearing you had.
My hearing is closed.
7:50 it was closed.
Okay. And then when is it going to be addressed for a vote?
It will be voted on June 25th.
Okay.
And I believe council will review and discuss possibly at next meeting too, for the agenda review.
The agenda review meeting, we put a tentative agenda before town council and has some other work to do. That's next Monday at 7:30 as well.
Okay.
It's likely there'll be comments made by town council, at least, what did they hear tonight? So yes, that's open to the public, of course.
But the vote
Okay.
June 25th.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any comments from anyone else in the public? Oh, hearing none, the zoning committee meeting is hereby adjourned.
Yeah, I would like to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting. Chief DeSanto will come forward with his report.
Pull it closer.
Pull your microphone.
I don't think these mics make anything to us.
They're on.
Right, but whatever she was doing, just pick it up.
Speak softly, Kara, speak stick.
People talk about us turning the page. They do. They say they hear
No, no,
that on
you
the,
said.
so if they can hear the page turn.
Chief's report.
You ready? Good evening.
Good evening.
This is the monthly report for the town of McCandless. I just hit some highlights. The report is on the town website. The month of May was again a very busy month for us. We answered nearly 1,000 service calls. I received a very heartfelt thank you from the North Allegheny School District. We were involved in investigating 2 separate incidents there at the school involving bomb threats. I'm incredibly pleased and proud of the officers' response in this particular situation and the investigation, and we did identify both individuals involved. Another reason talking about a situation like this, it was there was a orderly evacuation of the school. We practiced this, we go through it, and we actually had to put it to test, and it worked well. Worked very close in cooperation with the school district on working on these emergency exercises that when we need them, that we're ready. And we're also working in the process of working with them. We're implementing school resource officers for next year into the school. I want to commend real quickly Detective Egley and O'Connor. They did an outstanding job in an investigation. Of course, we are in an opiate crisis across this country, and we're not exempt from that here. And they charged an individual in delivering narcotics resulting in a death due to opiates. The investigation took several months and was conducted in collaboration with the Attorney General's office and the District Attorney's office and the DEA. And we believe we can successfully prosecute this individual. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, review a draft resolution to establish a policy which authorizes the town to enter into an agreement with towing businesses located in the town that meet standards and criteria set forth in the agreement for towing and storage of disabled vehicles in the town of McCandless.
Yeah, thank you. I'll shed some light on this for the public. Upon returning to the town and doing entrance interviews with the officers, it was brought to my attention by several officers, in particular Sergeant Brian Madden, that they believed that the needed of the implementation of a towing contract so fair and equitable requirements and guidelines could be established for all the towing companies. I had co-authored one previously in a community where I came from and implemented it, and I felt it was very successful. We immediately began to look at the process of the town. It took us some time to work through it. The town manager, Sergeant Madden, the town solicitor, we all got together and drafted a policy in fairness, and we agreed with the paramount objective that the business in towns would meet requirements to be eligible to participate in this rotation. The policy was drafted. We met with all the towing companies to hear their input and get their ideas to be fair. We worked diligently to get the contract, which is a draft in front of you here today. We try to be fair to everyone, including the businesses that are involved, the citizens of McCandless, and the public who call for this assistance. I believe it is a good document. The McCandless Police will be assigned to assessing and monitoring this contract to make sure it is adhered to and review it on a regular basis. This type of towing contracts have been in place all over the country, and we're looking forward to implementing it in the town. I want to thank first, very genuinely, our good towing companies, and I see some of them are here in the audience tonight. We asked them to be present, we've had a very good, long-standing relationship with, of working for us, and they've done a good job, and we do appreciate your service in the past and in the future. That's an explanation of how the towing contract came to fruition, the draft that's in front of you tonight.
And Chief, if I could add, we had a really good meeting, I think, with the towing company. I see 2 representatives at least that helped us.
Well, they were all here. I think they got a little long,
Somewhat.
and they had things to do.
Maybe they got a call. But we had a number, we had interaction over each of the sections, got a lot of good input from the towing companies, talking about what the standard rates are and so forth, to have an equitable rate so that it's set by the agreement. And as the chief pointed out, while council may pass the policy, as each towing company is evaluated under the policy, then council would see that before the council president. The program is that the council president and I would sign each contract after we receive the go-ahead from the police department that they have met the criteria under the agreement, and then the police department would regularly be able to inspect and check to make sure things are being followed.
Are there any other questions from council?
I noticed in your accident report that there were 3 accidents at Montclair. I know that's the intersection that's talking about being redone with the lights and all that kind of stuff. Were you familiar with the details of that, and do you know if the change in the lights would have made any difference if that intersection?
I specifically can't tell you, but I'd be glad to look into it.
I was
It's
just
a
wondering.
great question.
All right.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? No? Okay.
Chuck Ironman, Chuck's Auto Body, resident of Pine Road, last 6 years. When will the towing policy go into place, and is this the final document?
It's still a draft. As I asked at the meeting, you can still give input. Please do. But it is getting very, very close, and it will be, I would believe, officially voted on at the voting meeting at the end of this month, which would be June 25th.
Unless we hear something and somebody brings up to us,
If we hear something,
it's drastic, I think.
The only thing that I'm still going to ask council to consider, which I still find, somewhat confusing through this whole part, is I like the draft, but I still have a problem with, and it could put me on the chopping block as well. I still think that 6 towing companies is way too much. You may ask why. I'll give a real good example as, we go on a monthly rotation, okay? So myself and my brother tow. We know when our month is. When our month is when we're ready, 24 hours a day. When we go to bed, we know that we might have to wake up. When these other companies tow and they don't answer the phone at night, it then goes to the next guy, and then it goes to the next guy. Well, here in McCandless, it goes through 5 people right now. So you don't really know when you're going to get a call if you are on backup. I think it just creates so much confusion having so many tow companies in this township, whereas if you look around all the other townships, they do not have 5 companies. They have 1, maybe 2. I can't even think of any surrounding here that even have 3. And the reason for it is just that it simplifies things and makes things way easier for the dispatch, for the police, and for the towing companies themselves, being ready and being able to go do this. The other night, we got a call at 2 in the morning. We're like 4th on the list at this point. No one was available to go. We frankly weren't ready to go out. But if we knew we were ready, we would have backup plans. But 5 to 6 towing companies, to me, is still a little bit outrageous when no one else around here has that many towing companies. And there's no need for that many either.
Do we have any criteria for dropping a company if they don't make the?
Well, I think
if they don't say, I'm just tired and I don't want to show up.
I think one of the things that we want to do is we want accountability. We want accountability to make sure that the companies that are involved, that are doing a good job, are doing what there was no structure, there were really no rules, and we owe that to the public. And so everybody's going to be put on, for a better word, a probationary period to make sure they adhered to the provisions that are in this towing contract. And I had this where I was my prior chief, and at that time there were 5, and it ended up with 2. We'll see. This is going to be, that may actually working out. The council, the only thing I can say about it, and I understand your point, Chuck, but if somebody has a legitimate business in the town and they want to apply to be able to tow, now we have a structure and accountability to make sure that's done the way it should be done, because we're calling and representing the town, so that may work itself out. But I think in fairness, we still have to offer it to everyone who has a legitimate business and can meet this criteria. But as I said, in my past and talking to their chiefs, this has actually been something where people haven't been able to, or they don't want to adhere to what's going on, and that sometimes works it out.
Chuck says there are 6. Now, who sets up that schedule? You?
The schedule is on a rotational basis. It goes to the county, and as Chuck said, every month it rotates. I have nothing to do with the schedule. The schedule is given to the county 911 dispatchers, and when the police officers need an accident, have an accident, they call, and the dispatchers call the company that's in the rotation for the
So
month.
they're the ones that set up the schedule, basically.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we need to add something that says people will be eliminated if they're not taking them?
It's pretty clear. In the I believe in the draft, it says, I don't have it in front of me, but failure to adhere to the standards or to the procedures or to what is involved would make you exempt. And then we will basically bring that to their attention. I'm going to assign an officer who's a very good traffic person, who was one of the people that was passionate about this. And we do think that that there needs to be some improvement in this area, and there needs to be some structure, and that's why we implemented this.
Madam President, as I read the agreement, I did see performance standards in there that require 30-minute response time, and 3 consecutive misses within a 6-month period drops them from the contract, I believe, or at least provides the option to the town to do that, depending on the circumstances.
I believe, Councilman Kirk, you are correct, yeah.
Was that in
It's
here?
in
I didn't
section
know.
6B.
Section C, okay, I just didn't.
Yeah, 6B has the 30-minute response time, and if the contractor fails to meet the response requirement at least 3 times during the term of the agreement, they're out.
I thought it was very well written.
And do you feel satisfied with that?
I'm satisfied with the majority of it, yes. I just ask that the council does take a look at, please take some time, read it. And when you do read it, please put yourself in the situation, whereas if your vehicle is towed from a scene of an accident here in McCandless, one of these 5, 6 companies will come to the scene, pick up your car, and take it to their facility. Not all facilities not all the trucks are the same, not all the drivers are the same, not all the facilities are the same. And I ask you, as council, to look over that. Do we need 5 or 6 different ones? If you get your tow card this month, card towed this month, you may be having it picked up by Embers. Okay, you may be going to Embers facility. Your car may be there. If you get into a tow though next month, you may become the Chuck's Auto Body. And if you get into an accident the following month, you may be going to Mitchell's. And then if you get your car towed the following month, you're going to be going to Ray Platt's. It's a little bit confusing, you know what I mean? And I'm just saying, from the town of McCandless, when you get your car towed, you don't know where to go. And I know that because people come into ours and they say, you know where my car is? That's because we have 5 or 6 different places that it could go. But that's just me, and believe me, I could be on the chopping block. I could be cutting my own throat up here. But I'm just throwing it out there, just asking you all to just really consider it, look over it. And I know the chief is in a hard spot too, because no one wants to cut anybody. No one's here for that, but I'm just asking you to consider it because it makes things a little bit easier for the officers, dispatchers, and the towing company.
Thank you.
Are all
5
the
minutes.
towing companies in McCandless?
Yes. One of the requirements is to offer this is an opportunity.
In the new,
Yeah,
but I didn't know.
this is an opportunity, yeah.
Right.
They have to be in McCandless to have the opportunity, and then they will be given this contract, and then we'll look at the checks and balances. And like I said, sometimes I think this thing has a way of working itself out. Now, I started here in 1978, and there were, I believe, 5 companies, and they all had to be businesses that were established in, but now we've put some provisions. But I do understand Chuck's point, but it is what it is right now, and I think that in the sense of fairness, I don't think you can deny having someone that has a legitimate business that wants to try to be involved in the towing, to deny them that opportunity. But that's not my decision, that's council's.
We may knock them out anyhow.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Are there any other questions from the public? No? Okay, then I close the Public Safety Committee.
Respectfully, that's all I have, thank you.
Call to order the Finance and Personnel Committee. Presentation of the 2017 Town Audit by Independent Auditor. Short presentation.
Does everyone have a copy of the reports we're going to go over? Someday in my career, I hope that everybody comes for the auditor's presentation. I get excited when the room's full because I think they're there for us, but it never works out. We have a couple of different reports. I know you don't want us to read the entire report, but we're going to summarize everything. We issued several reports for you. We issued the top document that you should have is a communication to those charged with governance. It's a report that looks like this. It's a couple-page report, and it discusses our required communication to you under auditing standards. It's really a summary of how the audit went. The first sentence is, we have audited the financial statements of the governmental activities, each major fund. It's addressed to the council members, town of McCandless. Okay. We were engaged by the town to conduct an audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. That's what we did. We summarized your significant accounting policies in your footnotes, so we'll talk about those when we go through the footnotes. During the year, you had no changes to those significant accounting policies. Accounting estimates, every set of financial statements have estimates. You don't have any estimates that we want to point out as being sensitive. Disclosures, all your disclosures are clear, concise, and consistent. That just simply means they're easily understood. There's no lack of authoritative pronouncements for any of your financial information. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit, we had no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. The first step of the audit is to issue the DCD report. That's required to be issued to the state by the end of March. You met that deadline, and then the general purpose financial statements that you usually send out to your banks if you're required, or the general public. That's done a little bit later, and that was conducted and completed in May. So both of those were done in a timely manner. We did not identify corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We did not identify any of the audit adjustments that were required to be made to your financial statements to get them in accordance with GAAP. That's important to you as a board because you can rely on the financial statements without our intervention. In other words, we don't need to adjust your financial statements to make them right. So that's good reliance on the financial information you're given to make decisions. No disagreements with management about any accounting matters. We obtained a letter from management at the end of the audit saying that they agreed with the financial statements, and they told us everything to the best of their knowledge. We had no instances where we noted management's consultation with other accountants, or we made no arrangements with management prior to our retention that we would conclude a certain way. There is some required supplemental information that's in your financial statements that are required by the GASB. They're in the back of the financial statements. Dustin will go over the financial statements briefly. If you have any questions, be happy to entertain them now. Thank you.
Thank you. So the document that I wanted to just touch on is the large bound document that you received. These are the general purpose financial statements. The general purpose financial statements actually have two sets of financial statements within them. You have the government-wide financial statements, which starts on page 1 and 2. Then you have the fund financial statements, which starts on page 5. So they take two different approaches. The government-wide financial statements are a long-term outlook on the town's finances, and the fund financial statements is more of a short term. The short-term fund financial statements is what's congruent with your budgeting. So I'm just going to briefly touch on the government-wide financial statements. The key differences between these two financial statements are what I mentioned before, long-term items. So capital assets such as buildings, roads, streets, vehicles, those types of assets are on the government-wide financial statements, and they're not in the fund financial statements. Long-term receivables such as assessments and loans that are issued to the volunteer fire companies, those are on the government-wide financial statements. They're not in the fund financial statements because they're all from a long-term outlook. Two liabilities that are long-term liabilities that are in the government-wide financial statements is the net OPEB liability, which that is other than pension employee benefit plans. So that includes insurances that are paid to police officers after their or whenever they retire. The second is being the net pension liability. That relates to a liability to the defined benefit pension, which predominantly is made up of police pension benefits. I wanted to point that out, that liability significantly decreased from the prior year due to very positive market gains this year. Last year, the investment rate of return on the pension plan was about 4%. This year, it was close to 15%. So since there was a large increase due to positive market conditions in 2017, that liability significantly decreased from the prior year. Really all other items found in the statement of net position on the government-wide financial statements is very in line with last year. Then I just wanted to touch on the balance sheet government funds that's found on page 3. As you can see, they're broken up into funds the town reports. As of the year ended December 31st, 17, there was a positive increase in net position of $1.2 million. So you had revenues in excess of expenses of $1.2 million, so a positive increase in your fund balance at year end. Fund balance at year end was a total of $10.6 million. So that would be if all of your assets and liabilities were liquidated. That's the equity, the residual that you have left over from those particular items. They are earmarked for different categories. The first being approximately $30,000 for prepaid expenses, $371,000 restricted for capital construction, and that all is derived from the Transportation District Fund. So essentially, the assessments that are received are restricted to be put back into capital projects. You have committed balances of $403,000 that is available. That is available for fire apparatus funding. Capital projects earmarked for $6.3 million. That is made up of the Capital Improvements Fund and the State Highway Aid and the Streets and Water Assessment Fund. Then the undesignated fund balance of approximately $3.5 million is not earmarked for any particular items. That is available fund balance for future projects or needs of the town. Any questions on the government fund balance sheet? I just wanted to also point out on page 7, there's the general fund budget versus actual. As you can see here, there's positive variances, meaning the actual revenues were in excess of the amended budget, which is a great variance, and the expenditures were less than the amended budget. So that's also another good variance to have. The footnotes to the financial statements, there were no new accounting policies. There were no new footnote disclosures for 2017, so I wasn't going to touch on any specific areas unless you had any questions. One thing I do want to point out is there is a big up-and-coming accounting standards change. I referred to the OPEB benefits, which is all the insurances that are paid to uniform employees upon their retirement. They're going to expand on the footnotes for all of that type of information. And you'll have about probably another 4 or 5 pages that all includes different type of actuarial estimates and different tables that describe that liability in more detail. So that will be coming next year. We also issued a management letter that had that in there just to give management the heads up that standard has been out for a while now, and you will be needing to get the appropriate documents and reports prepared by the town's actuary to have that in place for reporting next year. Okay. Want to add anything, Tim? That's all.
Any questions? Thank you.
Review the resolution recommended for adoption at council's regular business meeting to amend the town's existing master fee resolution governing various town fees and charges.
This really is kind of a review this time of do it whether we need to or not, because there's very few changes. They're highlighted in yellow in the packet that was given to council and posted on our website. Really most significant is something that we're starting to encounter more. In fact, we encountered it tonight earlier, where an applicant proposed a zoning amendment to us. We have a second one later this month to consider. And we, in the terms of the street, we had to wing it as to how do we get somebody to agree to cover some costs. And we followed the format for rezoning, but that's sort of an ad hoc way of doing this. So we really are recommending that we have, it's on page 3 of the draft, item 2H, proposed zoning amendment, $500 application fee and a $3,500 escrow. We've made the escrow $3,500 for all the significant type of submittals because it's consistent for one thing, and the second thing is that kind of money gets chewed up by a site plan or a subdivision application fairly quickly. There are protocols that we've had in place for some time that we're still keeping, which is if the amount, the $3,500 escrow goes down to $1,500, we require the applicant to then boost it back up to $3,500, and whenever a project is done, after it's all completely accepted and approved, we release whatever money we have been holding. There's a state construction code fee. It seems burdensome to include it, especially if it's $4.50. We have a letter from the state that tells us what to charge. It's a uniform construction code fee. So we're making that as a generic statement that as the state may change that fee from time to time. So rather than call attention to that in here and council have to amend this, it makes no sense really to keep that listed. We'll just rely on what the state says they're going to charge. We'll have proof available to anybody that needs to see that. Lastly, we have rolled our site plan fees for parking lot permits into our zoning permits, so we don't have to list that as a separate item any longer. And that's basically it.
When's the last time these fees were changed?
2+ years ago. We like to go no more than 2 years. So we worked on it toward the end of last year. We worked on it earlier this year, and we had it ready here for a couple of months, but we wanted to get it in a meeting where it didn't take up too much time.
So this amounts to, it looks like all of these are increasing fees.
Mostly escrows. Most of the fees are the same. The actual fees are the same, but we're increasing several of the escrows to make sure we recover our costs and don't have to chase somebody for.
Escrow money they get back, though.
Oh, yeah,
if they
that's
don't
right.
need
Right.
it.
If somebody posts $3,500 escrow, they only spend $2,000,
I just
they'll
wanted
get
to make
$1,500 back.
so they're all escrows.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
all escrow. It's just
Any questions from anyone in council? Okay. All right. Next, review the checklist number 6, dated May 11th, 2018 through June 6th, 2018, totaling $872,676.86 as submitted to each member of council and posted on the bulletin board and the town website. Any questions about the bills?
Yeah, why are you doing this? I think it's the first time I did. Joanne didn't do it.
She's vice chair.
I'm vice chairman.
Okay, I thought Joanne did it the last couple of times. Okay.
She was.
That was in the voting meeting. She read for the voting
Right.
meetings because I was chairing the meetings.
She was absent last month. She was on vacation.
Any other questions?
You just checking to
You
make
want
sure
to
we're
get
paid.
his permission?
He wants
Why are we
you want the
switching it up
gavel?
here?
Did you
No.
get his permission?
Why are we switching things up?
You just check and see if we're paying
I don't like
attention.
change.
We are.
Here's a question. we spent $1,788 on sign-making supplies. How much money did that save us, being able to make our own supplies, make our signs?
I'd have to find out.
But it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good description. That's not a real
Yeah.
numerical description, but awesome sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, I knew it was a big saving. I was just trying to make you look good there.
Thank you.
Anyone have any other question about anything, any of the bills? Everybody's good? Okay. Notification, the letter of resignation as a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee has been received from Michael J. Zidnick, effective July 1st, 2018.
I'm sorry, that is June 1st. That's a typo. It's June 1st. He made it effective June 1st.
Okay.
That's why we posted it
Okay.
June 5th.
Okay, all right. The vacancy is posted on the town website on June 5th, 2018. We'll just vote to accept that resignation. Any question?
Madam Chair, just a shout out from Michael as a former member, Carolyn and I. Michael was the one who started the tips, your environmental tips that we enjoy on the calendar and the website. And so just a shout out for a great job that he did.
And he's moving, so he's not just resigning, he's like leaving, so he did regret having to resign. Number 6, notification that the resolution should be scheduled to amend resolution number 23 of the 2016 by naming current signatures authorized to sign documents related to the town of McCandless deferred benefit pension plans. Technicality, that's all.
Yep.
Any questions about that? Notification of the Allegheny County has announced its 2018 vacant policy side yard and blighted structure program. Applications postmarked August 31st, 2018 will be accepted by the Allegheny County under this program. Are we posting that on our website and some places so that people can see
Yes.
this? Okay, good.
Yeah, we're required to, I think. We have to post it. There's a requirement.
It's
already there, yeah.
Perfect. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure because that's a really good, program. If you have any of these properties close to you, you can look into those and possibly get those at a reduced rate.
We should announce it again at the business meeting.
Okay, put it on the agenda. We'll do that. Any questions about that? Seminars and conferences. There is the Allegheny League of Municipalities Golf Outing, July 9th, 2018. If you're not a golfer, there is still a hors d'oeuvres and reception following. If anyone is interested, please let Maureen know. Okay. Okay. Any comments from the public? I did notice that in their in the financial statement, it wasn't really for them that reads. This is for you again to show good things. That under our fund balance reserve policy, we are to maintain a minimal bond rating of AA. What is our bond rating?
I don't know. We haven't gone out for.
I thought you were going to say AAA.
We haven't gone out for any debt financing in so long that
Okay.
I haven't even checked.
Oh, I didn't know if it was just something you knew.
But
No,
my
you-
guess
you
is
don't-
since
you
we
don't-
have no debt, it's high.
Yeah,
Okay.
the way that works is the moment the council says, looks like we have to borrow some money, we have to go through a process of seeing what our current rating is.
Okay, all right.
But I will get that answer for you.
I just was wondering. The other thing, the second point of that policy is to decrease expenses by funding capital projects instead of debt. I talked to Toby about this week. We have that big cauldron that is coming up in the next couple of years. So I have asked him, and I'm sure Reed, to look at our budget and to see if there are some areas of savings that we can make so that we can start saving more toward this big capital project in the future. So when that comes up, that we possibly will not have to take out any debt for that too. So we can start saving for that now.
Sounds good.
That's it. Any public comment on any of these items? Okay, I would like to close the Finance and Personnel Committee, but first I'd like to take a 5-minute break for everyone in here, a recess, 5-minute recess.
You mean to fill my water? It's been empty for,
Potty break.
oh, Toby's filling it, all right. Well, I have to leave. About 2 hours work after this. That's right, Marie, she said 5 minutes at that time, or whoever's not back. In time. I'll sit for calling me.
I think we'll call you up to answer questions. Okay?
Is that what's going on with that?
Yeah, I just did a memo on it, and also Bruce and I had a discussion on it.
How do you feel about chicken?
Yeah, with the conditional use. He's saying.
Yeah, I suggested to Bill, because
The one that says start.
Bill's the service.
5 acres.
So he's the one that'll bring it out.
But I'm
But
just
I
saying,
suggested to him,
it says,
since I knew you were gonna be here, I said, why don't you?
You're at the back seat, I get down.
And answer questions.
I use my fingernail that
Specific
time.
numbers or whatever you have that. So
You're looking.
I thought they were wiser than.
You have to like,
I use my fingernail straight down. Yours may be too long to do that.
yeah.
It's longer fingernails
But
are
do you
better.
see, I was pushing.
Right, you really do have to push that.
I was pushing.
then it says small animals, it doesn't say small farm animals, but small animals would include small farm animals.
Go
I
4
just
minutes,
assumed
Bill.
batteries were
So
dying.
you have a
on the
class, of small animals, then you have a class of small farm animals. It's in the,
All of a sudden,
I'm saying,
it goes red and then it goes yellow.
so, Shelby was saying, but, in the rear, not close to, 30 feet to the wetland. But he's saying that it has to be, you know, he's saying these conditions have to be imposed on this, which is, you know, the following conditions. And there's nowhere in there.
When it's also unworkable, you want to have a public hearing before council with the transcript and recorder, every time.
Is that the one that didn't record right?
Backyard, even if you're right. it's still-
Now Bill ran out and said,
Should have gone early, it's not like I was speaking with him.
As you,
Now that one's hard to push. You definitely have to. For me, I got my fingernail right in the center and I pushed right down. So your fingernails might be long enough, but if you did that, they just
Someone's
couldn't.
got to just get it up, like, they don't go in front of council, get a court reporter. I mean,
just have a chicken.
just have a chicken, which seems like over.
Yeah, that's
Well, it does seem like overkill, but, you still want, you still want to get control. The question is whether they can change if you don't have 5 acres, and I say you can.
Is it 5 minutes?
You're without.
No, he set the timer.
but we're all here.
But your analysis.
Everybody's
makes sense, 'cause I'm reading it the
Yes,
same
we're
way
here.
you are.
Let's go.
Bruce is a pretty smart guy too, so he can be easy to get in a different direction.
Crowd.
Nobody else needs it.
I definitely.
I always defer to the
All right.
council person who's retired between the two. That's a council person.
I'd like to call to order the Services Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is our Fire Marshal's report for the month of April 2018 and the permit report for May of 2018.
Thank you, sir, and good evening, everybody. April, again, was just another busy month with a bag of mixed calls. As you can see, we ran a total of 62 calls. That's about average is close to 2 calls per day for the fire departments. Year to date puts us at 248 calls. So the fire companies are again, extremely busy with their training. A number of outside classes have been scheduled for the rest of the summer as we continue on. On behalf of the 3 fire companies and their families, they'd like to thank council for their ongoing support as we had the Emergency Services Day and the Kennywood Family Picnic on Saturday, June 2nd. It was a very well attended and everyone had a fantastic time, and they'd like to extend their appreciation to you for allowing that to continue to happen. Under trainings, the chief and myself, we attended our annual updates at the Emergency Operations Center at Allegheny County. Firefighter physicals have been completed, and I'd like to say we saved another life without giving too much information out. We literally saved a life. We took a man from the cath lab, and he ended up having a triple bypass that same day within an hour that he was doing it. So our efforts and for the continuing with the firefighter physical program saved another life. Steering committee meeting was met on the 5th of June, and I'm sure Ms. Schweiger and Mr. Kirk will expand on that at a later date. But that's all I have. Unless you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Fire Marshal Stack.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item 3, review a request the town council adopt a resolution supporting Northland Public Library's Keystone Recreation Park and Conservation Grant application through the Pennsylvania Department of Education in the amount of $568,973. Requested grant funds will be used to renovate and rehab the Northland Public Library. Now, in order to be considered, the town and all other Northland member municipalities must acknowledge and understand the undisturbed use of the facility as a public library for 50 years or the life of the project, whichever is shorter. Members of council, as this is the next item on here is the public comment. I'd like to ask if there are any questions from council members on this. I'll note that our executive director of the Northland Public Library, Ms. Amy Steele, is here. We'll be happy to answer any specific questions on this matter. Are there any questions? Okay.
So basically, the only thing required of us is for us to sign support of this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everyone understood that.
With that, I will open the floor for public comment on.
Bill, I do have a question.
Oh, yes, Councilman.
I guess I'm somewhat fuzzy on what this 50 years really means. That's not saying that the library's going to exist for 50 years. There's an obligation to what, commit to another 50 years? Or what is that really saying?
As I read the report, and I read that there is a commitment to keep it used as a public library to fully amortize and take advantage of these improvements. I believe that the mechanical systems and roof improvements are probably closer to a 30-year life, but I'm going to defer that question to Ms. Steele to just maybe
You understand my question?
expand on that.
What are
Yes.
we committed to do that? Just stay around for another 50 years?
Ideally, and a lot longer than that, if you ask me.
Thank
But for the purpose of the grant, because it is investing state taxpayer monies for these projects, they just want to be sure that they're not going to invest all this money in 5 years from now. We move out and go to another building, or the library ceases to exist. So, as Mr. Kirk pointed out, the projects that we're looking at will probably have a shorter lifetime than 50 years.
But they're looking for a commitment from us.
From
that
all.
Our intention is to run this as an ongoing concern.
Correct.
Something like that.
Correct, exactly. And all 5 municipalities that make up the authority have been asked to pass this exact same resolution.
And if Trump outlaws reading books,
We'll go underground.
why we're gonna keep it.
Are there any other germane questions to this matter? Thank you, Ms. Steele.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the public at this time? Yes, sir.
Thank you for attending, Amy.
John Harrison, 1473 Hedwig. Just a little bit more clarification on that. If the state is putting in that it's a 50-year term that you're basically planning on keeping the library there, does it say in there that whatever you're doing to it has to survive or last to that 50 years, or is that just kind of a, it's, because you're saying that they're saying that what I heard was that, we know furnaces don't last that long. We know air conditioners don't last that long. We know roofs don't last that long. But the question comes back, if we go and do this and it doesn't last that long, does that cause us?
I believe it's to the life of, or the life of.
Okay. Whichever is shorter, okay, all right.
Good
All right.
question.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that question and clarification. Are there any other questions? Hearing none. Services Committee is adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee. We'll start with Mark Sabine on the Public Works Activity Report.
Y'all have my, excuse me, activity report for May. If there's any questions on that, you can ask them as we go through here. Briefly for paving, Youngblood Paving has not started on any of this year's paving program yet. El Grande Paving did come in last week and began the final half of Sloop Road. If you recall, they did half of it last year, and we were delayed with drainage work, which we completed this year, and El Grande has been in, and they've gotten several soft areas that we found. They repaired, got the binder down, and would have put the top down this morning had it not rained. So they are planning on coming in tomorrow morning and putting the top down and finishing Sloop Road.
So does that cover also number 3, the report for the paving?
That's it.
And item number 4 is a notification of a road salt contract with Morton Salt under the North Hills Council of Governments. Bid price $69.36 per ton, requires ratification by town council. And then item number 5 would be public comment. Well, does anyone have any questions on town council? Item number 5, public comment.
What was the damage caused during a snowplow operation? Took 9 days to repair? Snowplow damage? The snowplow was damaged or was damaged?
Item G on your activity
On G.
report. Crew worked 9 days to repair damage. It's throughout the town?
During snowplow?
There are, when the guys are out plowing, often at night, it's difficult to see the edge of the road. And when we clear intersections in particular, when they push the snow up onto the lawns, it often scrapes some sod up. And we go back in the spring and we repair it.
Okay. I wasn't sure if the snowplow was damaged or the
Yeah, no, this
snowplow
is
caused
damage to lawns as we go around.
Okay.
And just quickly, to answer your question earlier about the cost of signs, I haven't actually looked at it recently, but part of the reason that we brought this in years ago was that by making our own signs, we're saving approximately 50% on each one of the signs that we erect.
I just wanted to, enjoy that savings. With you.
If you're done enjoying the savings, we'll adjourn the Public Works Committee meeting.
I'd like to call to order the Recreation Committee. Number 2, notification of a resolution is needed to request permission from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to place a banner across Perry Highway, Route 19, at Perrymont Road to advertise McCandless Community Day. Public comment? Council comment? Recreation Committee is adjourned. I'd like to move to enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Second.
And for the public, we will not be re-adjourning the minute. We'll just go home after this, so.
In case you wanted to stay.
In case you wanted to stay.
Do you need to vote on that?
Yeah, we do need that vote.
You have to vote on that.
All those in